AliCamp 2024. Michelle Chu and Nick Stathakis, from the ground up, rebuilding ABC iView Android TV for all. AliCamp 2024 is brought to you by our gold sponsors Intopia and ANZ, silver sponsor Canva, and Auslan sponsor SignHow.
So, before we start, my name is Michelle Chu. Today I also have Nick here with me.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick.
Hi everyone.
So I'll introduce myself. Okay. Yeah, so as I was introduced very kindly, I am an Android engineer at ABC. So I work with Michelle daily to bring some accessibility requirements to life in our recent rebuild of iView.
Thank you. And I'm Michelle Chu. I'm the accessibility specialist at the ABC. Reminding myself back to the Adrian talk earlier, I'm either on the second stage of that I'm happy, but also have gone through the third stage of where like everything is fine, and I'll go back to the happy stage. But also listening to Ali talk earlier, like having a job, just drink and do some testing seems really fun. That sounds like a Friday afternoon thing. Anyway, today I won't stand between you and lunch, but I will actually in the next 20 minutes. And let's get started. Next, I need a clicker.
I got it.
Okay, cool.
So we're a team.
Okay, let's do it. So for some of you that are not from around here, from Australia, if you don't know, ABC iView is the free-to-watch video-on-demand streaming services by the Australian Broadcasting Corporations. For us, accessibility and inclusion is at the heart of everything we do. It is who we are. We have shows ranging from kids and family, like Ginger and the Vegisaur, really fun, you should actually check it out. News and analysis, Gardening Australia, like on lifestyles, Total Control, like entertainment, or Utopia, my favorite, is it's all about work drama, it's lovely, and working in the broadcasting. Public servants, but it's hilarious. And ABC is for all Australians. Next. But the thing is, with our 2019 MVP version of that, Android TV just isn't really cutting the mustard anymore. Android TV is one of our fastest growing platforms for ABC iView. We know that the design is just, it's not that great. We didn't do it for putting a new slab of code or paint in it, but we know that in general, it's just not really easy for people to find new content. Screen reader hasn't that experience, or accessibility hasn't really embedded from the very beginning. It's not particularly seamless to use. Also, the navigation itself just isn't that intuitive. So investing time in it and making sure it's built right was crucial for us and grow the audience as well. Next slide.
Yeah, so we decided to rebuild iView with Jetpack Compose. But you may be thinking, why Compose? So firstly, Compose simplifies the way that we create UIs, greatly speeding up the development time of Android apps. So this allowed us to spend more time thinking of what to build rather than how to build it. And there's even been a Twitter engineer who's quoted that to build the same button, it required 10 times less lines of code. And secondly, Compose makes sensible accessibility choices by default. So for example, if we tell Compose that some element is a button, Compose will automatically generate hint text for a screen reader to indicate that that component is clickable. And finally, Compose provides guardrails for developers. So one example of this is that Compose actually won't let you add an icon or an image to an app without defining a content description for it. So today we'll be stepping through 3 core concepts which allowed us to make iView as accessible as possible. So firstly, we'll explore the importance of color and style, where we'll focus on material design and its ability to speed up development whilst also making beautiful apps. Then we'll jump into the world of screen readers and the importance of labeling our components. And finally, we'll conclude with an exploration into TV focus management and how we can manipulate focus to create a more intuitive user experience.
So, as you know me already, every presentation I have to have a cat in it. And I've actually just learned that Nick has 3 cats. I don't know how I didn't know that. Anyway, the first one we're going to touch on is about color and style. So watching a TV is actually quite different than looking at it on a mobile phone or like a laptop. Usually it's in that 2 to 3 meter distance, actually quite similar to what you have today, but like imagine like similar. So we need to make sure that the color also looks good on large screen compared to our smaller phones, because usually you don't really want to walk towards the TV to read what's on the screen. You want to be sitting really comfortably on the couch with your cat on your laps. Next slide. So what we did is that the color that we choose, the color combo, we choose really carefully. We try to do like at least 7:1. Good contrast, but also not too bright, because bright white is actually not very good to see. And that's why today I try to make the background a bit yellow, so it's a little bit easier on the eye as well. We also make sure our text is at least 24 pixel large, so at a distance you can still really comfortable viewing what's on the screen. We use tools like accessible perceptual contrast algorithm, very rarely I say the whole full name, but APCA, and also different color blindness visualization as well, just so that we make sure that our text, our color is actually easy to see. So on the screen I have two tools I use quite often when I'm looking at colors combos. So the first one is the Atmos APCA contrast checker, which is basically showing you both the APCA contrast, showing you for what weights you want, what minimum weight, for the weight that you choose, what's the minimum fonts that you should have. Also the WCAG 2 as well, so that meanwhile we're trying this new color contrast checker, we're still meeting WCAG as well. This is my last time we'll be talking about WCAG. And then the second one is called Simdel Tone Sum, which is overlay, but not an overlay. It's just overlay on top of your screen so that you can see with different color blindness what it would look like. So example I have is like a semi-gray version of the design. But how do we make sure that when we do the design, I think that's a pretty classic thing, you know, you create design, you have the color, but sometimes when you go to dev, it's not what you think it is. And also when you have it on the screen, that's just a little bit different from your monitor as well. So, Nick?
So we implemented our app styling using Material, which is a design language developed by Google to standardize UI creation. So Material is powerful because it simplifies how we design and actually think about user interfaces. So instead of designers inventing and communicating custom names for business-specific colors, Material introduces the concept of primary and secondary colors, which are intended to represent a brand's main color choices. So once defined, these colors are actually automatically applied throughout the app, meaning that developers don't have to worry about assigning specific colors to each UI element like a button or a text field. So this means that Material guarantees that our apps will have a consistent look and feel, allowing us to focus more on the overall user experience rather than tediously styling individual elements. So let's now take a look at Material design in action with a simple example of 3 action buttons in a row. So by default, we have access to this general Material theme. And as we can see, it provides this default purple primary color when we focus a button on the right. And it also provides black colored text to contrast the white background. But this doesn't look very iviewy to me, so let's make our own custom theme. So to create a custom theme, we need to first establish a set of colors and typography that we want to use and that match our brand. So modern design tools like Figma make it as easy as a one-click export to get these values into the code, so there isn't much room for miscommunication there. And once we have these values, we can actually customize that default theme with our own brand-specific colors to get our iview theme. So now let's apply this custom theme to that same row of buttons we just saw. So we can now notice that the buttons actually look completely different. So now when they're focused, they have a blue color, which comes from our theme's primary color. And we can also notice that the text has changed to white to contrast the now dark background. And now if we wanted to change the primary color of the buttons when they're focused to, let's say, gold, it's as simple as changing the primary color of our theme. If we apply this one-line change and look at the row of buttons, we can see that they've now changed color. And now notice that how none of these changes actually required us to actually jump into each individual button's code, but rather this theme trickles down this primary color. So now bringing it all together, we can check out a practical application of this. So in iview, when we're watching a live stream and we're up to date, we want the player to be gold. And when we're not up to date, we want the player controls to be blue. So using what we've previously seen, and implementing this behavior is super easy with Material design, as we can simply change the primary color of our theme when we scroll back and when we're back to date and stuff like that.
And then the second thing concept, I guess, topic to touch on is about grouping labels and elements. Now, imagine you have to flip the page, reading the book. You flip the page every 3 words that you read, or every line that you read. That's pretty annoying, isn't it? That's what it's like sometimes when you're using a screen reader with a TV. Next slide. So how a screen reader works on a TV is that it works quite similar to what you do for mobile phone or website, but it's a little bit different. So using a screen reader for usually for desktop and mobile is very linear. You either press right or you swipe left, swipe right to go to the next element. It's one list, it's linear. But on a TV, it's basically 4-directional. To navigate, at least how Android TV works right now is that you have to press right to go to the element where you focus to the right, and then press left to go to the one on the left, up to the one on top, and down to the one on the bottom. So you almost have to remember what's on the screen in order to know how to do certain things. Like if I want to open the menu, where do I press? How do I get to where I go? It's just not intuitive. It is not easy to do. It's disorientating. What we need to do is to optimize that screen reader navigation experience. So we want to make sure that first we group all the relevant information together. So reduce the number of clicks that you have to do, which is that's the one that we're going to touch on today, so that you don't have to kind of keep pressing down to just hear one more sentence. Second thing is we're going to touch on actually won't touch on today, but what could help is that to add that instructional text as part of your content description or your label, so people know, okay, what's the purpose of each D-pad button? What will happen if you press right? What will happen when you press left? So that it's a little bit easier for them to navigate. Number 3 is about auto-announcing every time you land on a new screen. So there should always be an action and reaction. When you do something, there should be a notification about what you have done. So when you landed on a new screen or show screen, it's like, hey, now I'm on Utopia show screen. Probably not in that fun way of saying, but very dry way of saying it. But today we'll touch on the first one.
So the first step to understanding labeling in Compose is to understand how the labels are actually built. So every component can have children components within them, like a column containing multiple text children components. So by default, each component is treated individually by the screen reader. However, if multiple components logically belong together, Compose lets us easily group multiple children components under a singular parent. So let's now take a look at an example where we have a parent column containing 3 text child components. So in our case, this is a list of Bluey show details, including a title, a duration, and description text. So by default, Compose will not group these components together for the screen reader. So as a result, we can see that the screen reader would focus the title, and then the duration, and then the duration text one by one. So this could be a poor user experience as it requires the user to repeatedly move their focus in order to explore the show details. It would be more practical to group all of these show details together, especially if we start thinking about the bigger picture of the screen that they'll belong on, which could contain other important buttons such as the watch button. So from the code snippet, we can see that Compose has this handy tool which allows us to merge the descendants of a particular component. If we revisit the idea of Compose as a tree, we can think of this as combining several small twigs together into one big branch. So this means that all 3 text elements would be grouped together and treated as a single item for accessibility purposes. So now after we look at this code in action, we can see that the screen reader selects all 3 text fields at once and even adds punctuation between them. So let's now check out a practical example of this on the iView show screen. So as we can see in the video, the metadata is all grouped together, allowing the user to easily navigate to and from the action buttons and the metadata with a single focus movement.
The third topic I'm going to talk about is about focus management. Just like a relay, a bad focus management is going to leave the other person confused. Imagine I'm doing a 4x100, about to pass them the button, and I drop it. Not fun, isn't it? Next slide. So how Compose works is that Compose has a default focus order, what it would do is that whenever you press right or left or up or down, it will basically move to that closest element on that direction. So when we're doing design, writing requirements, doing development, we want to make sure that that focus is always predictable and simple. As Charlie said, we don't want people to pull their head. I'm like, where am I meant to go? I don't know, I'm confused. No, we want none of that. So we ask ourselves the question, where should the focus go if they press right or left? And where should the focus first land when they get to a screen? And what happened when that focus just doesn't make sense? Like, what should we do? Well, we can customize it.
So let's now take a little case study into Composer's focus system using my cool cat selector app. So in the video, we select series 2, but once we return to the series list after scrolling through some cats, we actually incorrectly take into series 5, as we'll see shortly. So as Michelle touched on previously, Composer's default behavior is to focus the closest element in the direction we are moving, which in this case, it actually is series 5. But for certain screens like this one, this behavior can lead to an unpredictable and confusing experience as the user would expect to be returned to where they left off previously, which is series 2. So let's now take a look at the actual code of what's happening. So the layout right now is pretty simple with a list of series on the left and then a list of cats on the right. We aren't applying any special focus logic, so Composer is just navigating to the closest item as we just saw. So let's now take a look at the improved version. And we can see this is actually a one-line fix where we apply what's called the focus restorer to the list of series. So this is a useful function which does what its name says. It keeps track of the last focus series, and when a user enters the list again, it will restore their focus back to there. So let's now revisit our awesome cat app again, but now with the improved code. So we can notice that now let me play this video. Once the user now scrolls through some cats and they return back to that list, we'll go back to series 2. There we go. Awesome.
Spoilers alert, like none of it is actually Nix's cat or my cat. By the time I realized he's doing a cat one, I'm like, can you put mine in it?
Open source cats.
It was way too late. But anyway, I think it would be good to wrap it up that it is accessible by design. We're shifting left. We're not waiting until a dev something, then you realize the design doesn't make sense, it's not accessible, it's not simple, then you waste way too much time and money to rebuild everything again. It is none of that. Next slide. Product team understand accessibility from the beginning. Accessibility, aka just me really, is fully embedded within the team. If that's not the case, I don't think I'll be talking about what a good job that we did. I will be talking about what actually is the downfall of this whole project. And accessibility everyone just really understands accessibility. There's no arguments. Yes, they might not be as technically skilled at the beginning, but it doesn't take long to learn accessibility. As long as you have that empathy, understand that, that's like one big step already. The other thing is that accessibility requirements are also embedded as part of the Figma design. It's this next to all the design requirements, so developer doesn't have to try to remember, what's the requirement again, what I meant to do? Or I don't know. There's no more sweeping it under the carpet. I'm not doing it because I forgot about it. So, and then also with that, we work together, not in silo. We always have that conversation. If things doesn't work, we talk about it and then find a solution that works well for all of us as well. So that is very important. Next slide. And we follow Android TV best practice. Look it up, the Android TV design guideline. I think have a look, search it up later on. And accessibility is just embedded within the Compose coding and testing framework. It's really easy to use. It wasn't as good a couple years back, but now I think it's quite mature, and we just don't hardcode fixes. No, we need good code quality. We don't fix them. We don't try to hack the solutions if it doesn't work. And if there's stuff that we know is Google bugs, we raise it directly to Google and be like, fix your stuff, and we contribute back. And in summary, accessibility just needs to be embedded from the beginning and work closely with developer, designers, QA, or the people. If you're not collaborating, you're not working together, that's not going to work. And Jetpack Compose is really good for accessibility and has a lot of implementation already built in. So use it And do consider in general when developing it, consider your color palette really carefully. Your brand color, if it's not accessible, I suggest don't change it too much, but like you change the shading a little bit and just hack your way through it. It works, it really works. And then group elements as well to simplify the talkback navigation if you can, and also make focus predictable and simple. Make it simple, man.
Yeah, so okay, I know I'm probably right on time, but I'm going to speed run this last part. So our talk today can probably best be summarized into this one line of, it's not that hard to make TV apps accessible. So as developers, designers, and even product managers, it's easy to get laser focused on features and tickets and neglect actually making our apps accessible. But it's important to remember that accessibility is actually for everyone, and making sure our apps are accessible will only improve the chances a user will return and use our app again. And this shouldn't really be a hard task either. So as we've seen, modern frameworks like material design and tools like Jetpack Compose actually make it easy as ever to make apps accessible. And thanks for joining us, everyone.
AliCamp 2024.